All right, let us say hello to Eric Bischoff, one of the co-founders of Real American Freestyle, the man who led WCW to ratings wins over the WWF for 83 weeks during the Monday Night Wars, the former general manager of Monday Night Raw, and the accolades just go on and on. Eric, what an honor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I just want to let everybody know, though, a couple hours ago, I had eye surgery, nothing serious, cataract surgery. And they did put me under, so to speak. So if I'm not as quick on my feet as I normally am, I'm going to blame it on the anesthesia. I'm still kicking out.
Well, we appreciate the honesty there. But look, we're coming off of RAF 5, which was a big event at Amarant Bank Arena in Sunrise, Florida. Colby Covington versus Luke Rockhold was the main event. And not only were a lot of eyes in the wrestling community on this event, Eric, but it had the eyes and imaginations of mixed martial arts fans as well. And now that it's all said and done, what was your reaction to it all? How well did this event go in your eyes?
I thought it went out. It went extremely. I mean, it's hard for me to even articulate how impressed I am with this entire team at Real American Freestyle. A group of people that have never worked together before, many of them who are working on a project that none of them had ever had experienced before, that, you know, creating live events and producing a television show. In and of itself, even with an experienced team of people, it's very difficult to pull off in a new event that's never happened before. There's a big learning curve there. And this team came together and just absolutely blew it out of the park in such a big way that to be honest, we're 2 years ahead of where I hoped we would be. And I'm a very optimistic person by nature. I'm driven by optimism, but I would have never imagined we would have been able to pull off an event the way we did in Miami after only having produced 4 events before that. So I can't express how happy I am and proud of the entire team, everybody that's on that team.
Of course, you know, I was obviously intrigued heading in. I've covered some events just watching it on the streams, but I've never actually been there in person. But I was there on Saturday, and you know, of course, the wrestling fan base has been looking for something like this for a really long time. But obviously, adding the UFC names and some of the stars and names from MMA past and present, it certainly helped generate some more eyeballs. And I know Bo Nickal is one of the first big signees. And now we saw Colby and Luke Rockhold and Armin Sarukian. We're seeing Yoel Romero at events, Henry Cejudo and Uriah Faber getting ready to headline the next event. How did you guys sort of figure out, look, perhaps a good formula here is adding the UFC fighters onto these events to compete in these matches?
Well, it happened organically, and I think if you were to go back and look at the genesis of that strategy, it probably took place on the very first Fox Nation interview that Chad Bronstein, our CEO, Izzy Martinez, our COO, myself, Hulk Hogan was there while he was still with us. And in fact, I think I talked about the fact that, you know, wrestling, freestyle wrestling, amateur wrestling, call it whatever you want, wrestling, it really is the foundation of MMA. And the hope and the vision that we had early on, as expressed in that very first interview, was that by showcasing wrestling at an elite level and helping people understand that wrestling is really the foundation of MMA, we believe there was a lane there. We believe there was a lane of MMA aficionados, people that really understand the sport of MMA, that would appreciate Real American Freestyle by showcasing elite freestyle wrestlers, because that educated fan base of MMA fans recognize just how valuable that skill set is and that sport is to MMA. And I think we blew that out of the water. You know, we had a great idea, we believed it to be true, and now we're proving that it's true. So, for example, on, you know, the card in Miami, Real American Freestyle 05, you have both ends of the spectrum. You've got Bo Bassett, who is an 18-year-old prodigy in the art and sport of freestyle wrestling. You're looking at a young man who's 18 years old. He's either still in high school or barely out, who is probably, he was creating his legacy as we watch at 18 years old, 16, 17, 18 years old. And then on the other hand, you've got the Colby Covingtons of the world. You've got the Bo Nickals of the world. Bo Nickal just had a knockout, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago in UFC, while he was the real American freestyle cruiserweight champion, I believe. So it's obvious to me that wrestling is such an important part of MMA. It's equally obvious to all of us now that the audience agrees with us and is turning out to support us. And we're providing absolutely the best athletes in both disciplines in one format called Real American Freestyle.
I talked to a lot of the fans over the weekend at the meet and greet. I want to touch on that in a moment as well, but they like the idea of like the MMA versus MMA matches. Some liked the Yoel Romero versus Buchanan idea, or I guess MMA versus wrestler. And I was speaking to someone the other day who thought getting to MMA versus big name wrestler is eventually the way to go. But to get there, let's do MMA fighter versus, insert guy who has wrestled before. But let's sort of use that as a litmus test or a building block to get to those sort of MMA versus big wrestling star matchups. So putting the Booker hat on, Mr. Bischoff, what would happen if this UFC star faces this wrestling star? Like, where do you see this formula going, I guess, from like a booking perspective on, I guess, getting to these big MMA star versus wrestler matchups?
That's really a question for Izzy Martinez, our co-founding partner, and to a large degree, Chad Bronstein. I stay out of the booking element. I've had enough of that. I made it very clear when I tagged into this team that I was very much interested in creating a television format that would elevate wrestling and make it an entertaining sport that would satisfy and attract the masses, because that's what freestyle wrestling needs. That's what the sport of amateur wrestling needs, whether it's at the high school level or kids, high schoolers, even college. We need to elevate the sport of freestyle wrestling. And to do that, my job here at Real American Freestyle is to create an entertaining format that will allow us to reach that mainstream acceptability as a sport. I also made it really clear that I didn't want to get involved in booking decisions because, like I said, I've got the white hair and the liver to prove that I've been there, I've done that. But I think I think those types of matchups will evolve over time, and I'm looking forward to it. I think if we could jump forward and look at Real American Freestyle 20 events from where we are now, let's call it 29. So that gives us 2 years under our belt. I think that you'll see those kind of matchups. They'll be exciting for the audience. They'll have storylines behind them. There'll be incredible stakes for the competitors, because let's face it, without stakes, there is no story. Without story, all it is an exhibition. We've been watching amateur wrestling exhibitions forever. That's what the NCAA championships are on ESPN. That's what, there's a lot of wrestling that you can watch on different streaming platforms. And it's great wrestling to watch, don't get me wrong. But when you add story, when you create characters and you really create stakes that matter, that people can relate to, now you've got a television product. Now you've got a legitimate sport.
One of the big takeaways from coming to that event on site, and I mentioned it earlier, the Sunrise, Miami, South Florida wrestling fan base, it's big. Like, the meet and greet was really impressive. And what blew me away was so many families. There were a lot of kids there, and events like that, those pre-event meet and greet for fans and families, you don't see that before a UFC event. How proud were you to see that kind of attendance to meet the competitors on the card just hours before the event?
I was blown away, and it was really Chad Bronstein was the driver behind that. I know Izzy Martinez, our COO, also very, very supportive of that initiative. But I'm so impressed with the effort and the resources that were put behind that. Because if you think about it, any sport, any product, let's look at McDonald's, for example. McDonald's brings kids in. Of course, the parents have to bring the kids in, but McDonald's markets towards children because they know they're building a customer for life, right? And I think Chad had the vision, as well as Izzy, to realize that, the youth wrestling component of this sport is such an important part of it. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. Women in wrestling, talking about collegiate wrestling, amateur wrestling, one of the fastest growing segments of sports in the United States. And Chad and Izzy put the resources behind attracting those kids, and not only attracting them, but having an experience that they can't get anywhere else. To be able to meet and greet and get autographs and pictures, collectibles. I never would have imagined 6 months ago when I first sat down with Chad and Izzy and we first started in Hulk, obviously at that time, 7 months ago, I never would have imagined that we'd have trading cards that would be selling out, collectibles already. I wouldn't believe that we'd had 600, 700, 800 people at one of our meet and greets prior to the event. I wouldn't have thought that possible. But it is, and I'm so proud of Chad and Izzy and the team, Tanya, everybody that works so hard to make that happen, because it's an incredibly valuable part of our business plan.
In that same room, about 24 hours prior, we had the press conference, and I saw you for a quick second, an hour before it all went down, and we're seeing all these competitors get up there. They're answering questions from the media, and everything's going great, and we're pumping these matches up. And then Bo Nickal and Yoel Romero go up there, where the excitement levels are just continuing to build there. And then Colby and Luke go up, and things are very friendly between the two. People were kind of wondering how that was all going to go. And Luke gets Colby some protein gummies, and there's a lot of respect between the two guys. And then Colby turns his attention to Bo Nickal, who's sitting in the front row, and they go back and forth. And then Luke Rockhold jumps in, and it's Luke and Colby versus Bo Nickal. As you're watching this unfold, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking Colby's got a mouth made for money. That's what I'm thinking. And look, the world I come from, right? I mean, I've spent 35 years at the highest levels in sports entertainment, both as president of WCW, when we kicked WWE's ass all over the television planet and became the #1 wrestling company in the world by changing the professional wrestling format, is how I did it. A lot of people are aware of the fact that I was running WCW when we basically outperformed WWE, which nobody thought was possible. I did that by changing the format. And that's exactly what I'm doing here at Real American Freestyle. We're changing the format to be more entertaining, more cutting edge. And a big part of that is the characters. And you've got to create conflict. I mean, if you look at the reason anybody watches anything on television, it's the drama, it's the conflict, it's the resolution of that conflict, and the story arc that contains it, right? And when you have somebody like Colby Covington, who is controversial, who says things intentionally to create drama, that's such an important component of what we're here to do. Now, the flip side of that is sometimes it stings. Sometimes it may be, dare I say, inappropriate, but it doesn't matter because it works. And it works because some guy I know really, really well wrote a New York Times bestseller called Controversy Creates Cash. And that's what Colby did. So do I wish it would have gone differently? Because I really like Bo Nickal. I mean, I don't get impressed easily. I've been around the block a lot. I've met some very impressive people in my life. And I don't mean to sound arrogant or anything like that, but it takes a lot to impress me. Bo Nickal impresses me as a human being, as an athlete. And I was a little disappointed for Bo because I feel the way I feel about him. But I've also listened to Bo's comeback. And I know that Bo would love to get in the octagon with Colby. And here's my hope. I know I'm probably speaking out of school here, but I hope Dana White's paying attention. I heard Bo calling out Colby Covington. So let's do it on a White House lawn. I'll rip his limbs off. Well, I'm game. There's your storyline right there. There's act one. There's act one of a 3-act story. Shakespeare would love it. Let's make that happen, Dana. Come on.
Yeah, because I asked this because on Friday I'm thinking, because controversy creates cash. I'm like, this is money, right? Eric must be loving this right now. We're getting a lot of attention on the event. Perhaps we get some future booking. Bo Nickal versus Colby in wrestling. Bo Nickal versus Luke Rockhold maybe in a wrestling match on a future RAF card. And we have the highlights, we have the clips, and we have the story. We can tell this pretty easily. And then, like I said, going back to Saturday, like I'm seeing the meet and greet crowd, and I'm like, I actually don't know what he might be thinking right now. So I'm glad you kind of clarified that, like, yeah, this is great for cash, but on the flip side, yeah, I wish it could have gone a little differently.
But at the same time, and now this is, the businessman in me. I absolutely love all the hype. I've been watching interviews referencing Real American Freestyle from sports journalists and talking heads and podcast hosts and all kinds of people since Sunday morning. I've been reading about and hearing about and listening to interviews about that confrontation at the press conference. And again, as the guy that wrote the book, Controversy Creates Cash, I'm just looking at all of this as equity. The value of our promotion and everything we're doing has gone up because of this. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it's not valuable.
When I tell people a lot about Colby, because I've known Colby for a long time, he's a guy that I've interviewed before he got to the UFC. And, we haven't done interviews like this in quite some time, but I did run into him backstage a little bit before the event on Saturday. And I tell people there's two different Colbys. There's Colby when the lights are on, there's the character Colby, and then there's the guy who doesn't have the camera on him. And it's like two totally different people. So to kind of clarify for the people watching right now, for you and for the rest of the team, from the feedback you've gotten, what was it like working with Colby ahead of this event?
I didn't really get a chance to interface with Colby a whole lot. Hold on, we've got fire trucks going by. I don't know what the hell's burning down. I'm in Billings, Montana. I came up here to get my eyes to dry. I live down in Cody, Wyoming, 2 hours away from here. We don't have fire trucks like that. Cody. We got horses and wagons. I'm just kidding. What was it like? I didn't get to interface much with Colby. The little that I did, he was cordial. Here's the thing. He was professional as hell. I mean, to your point, really, because I never got a chance to know him, but now listening to you kind of describe him, that's what I saw. I saw a guy behind the scenes that was a true 100% professional. I saw a guy doing a press conference that was doing what guys like Colby do, which is stirring up interest, creating controversy, creating drama, so that there could, at some point, hopefully, be a resolution. And I think that resolution will come, whether it's in UFC or Real American Freestyle. It's going to happen eventually.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the man that was a part of this that is no longer with us, Hulk Hogan. He passed away this past July, and we saw his son Nick be pretty heavily involved, wrapping the belt around some waist on Saturday. I actually went to the backstage area, and for a minute I thought Derek Jeter was backstage, so I almost made a complete fool of myself. But obviously he's a part of it. So I was thinking during the event Saturday and just seeing how everybody was into it. How do you think Hulk would have reacted to that event? And how do you think he'd feel in regards to the future of RAF after these first 5 events and the vision you all sort of laid out for this product?
Well, I think he would be excited at the vision because we discussed the vision. I mean, as a group, Izzy, Chad, myself, Hulk, in our very initial meeting, we talked about what this Real American Freestyle product could look like. And we talked a lot about the production values and the presentation and the format of WWE, which, I've got a fair amount of experience in it. And we also talked about the format and the presentation of UFC. For the record, UFC learned a lot from WWE. Right. In fact, they learned so much they bought the company. So there you go. But we wanted to look at the strengths of those formats, find the entertaining elements that we know consistently work year in, year out, to create some of the highest rated programming on television anywhere in the freaking planet. So you look at those elements and then you decide, or you create ways to modify them and adapt those elements. While they might not be exactly the same, they're similar in their recipe, so to speak. And we're delivering that. We're delivering exactly what we talked about. Not as much as I want to yet. We still haven't gotten to the format that I'm excited about yet, but we will. It's a matter of time. You can't, in this business, in a television business, particularly the live action entertainment, sports entertainment business that we are in, much like UFC, and in a way, WWE, although they're not a legitimate sport, clearly it's scripted entertainment, but the presentation is such that we're not quite where we're going to be. Again, I reference, RAF, 29. We'll look a little bit different at that event than we did at RAF 05, because we'll find those elements, we'll refine them, we'll tweak them, we'll adapt them to our format, and all that happens over time. It's impossible to come out of the chute with the perfect format. It takes a while to get there. Those ideas come to you. After 05, I went back to my hotel room and I had 2 or 3 different ideas that I wrote down that I want to try to integrate into the next format. And that's an ongoing process. Television evolves over time because the audience's expectation evolves over time. Audience's acceptance evolves over time, and we will as well.
I want to ask you this, the businessman here. This is obviously in the television producer as well. It is on Fox Nation. It's a streaming service. It's under a paywall, which is fine. Digital is huge right now, and it's got to be a big part of the multi-pronged process. But one of the things that I kept hearing is, hey, I hope to see them on a network. Will we see them on FS1? How can this be, I guess, as easily accessible to us so we can all watch it? And this is just some of the feedback that I got heading into the event. What is your response to that? Could we see a world, I mean, we're talking about RAF 29, could we see a world where Fox Nation could remain the digital partner streaming these events, but maybe we could end up on a FS1 or some sort of Fox Sports affiliate at some point?
I mean, anything's possible. Let's start with, the monthly events are our version of what WWE would call a premium live event that happens once a month, or the UFC numbered events that happen once a month. I can't imagine anytime in the foreseeable future where those big monthly events will be anywhere other than Fox Nation. Fox Nation, Fox in general, have been one of the big reasons for our success is the support that we're getting from Fox. There are TV commercials that Fox is producing and airing on playoff NFL games on Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, we can't afford to buy that kind of advertising and promotion, but Fox is supporting it. So I can't imagine a scenario within the next couple of years where we're not going to be partnered with Fox Nation. However, I can imagine a scenario where we're going to be producing a weekly television show, a scaled down version, if you will, of the big premium live event, a scaled down version of that's a weekly show that could quite possibly air on another platform, whether it's ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or CW or Netflix there's a million places to go with something like this. Keep in mind, live sports is probably one of the most in-demand properties in all of entertainment right now. So I think once we prove ourselves and we prove to the other networks that are out there and advertisers and sponsors that this is a legitimate sports league, I think we'll have an ability to create additional programming and content that will live outside of Fox Nation. But I am so grateful, quite frankly, to Fox Nation for believing in us, believing in the opportunity, and supporting it to the extent that they are. It's incredible. Like, you could not ask for a better television partner than Fox Nation.
I have to tell you, I felt so great seeing the great Gerald Briscoe in the building.
Yeah.
All the matches. Mr. Briscoe, as I called him to his face, and I always will, since he'll still stretch me even at his age. How does he like the product? Like, how into this concept is he from where you sit? This must be like the best thing for him.
I've known Jerry for 20 years, and I too call him Mr. Briscoe. In fact, I called him Mr. Briscoe on his 60th birthday, when he and I and John Cena and Bruce Pritchard were all out having a couple beers after a Monday Night Raw. And we stuck around the hotel for so long that we drank all the beer. They ran out of beer. They had to go get some more beer. They closed down the bar, and somebody decided it was Jerry Briscoe's 60th birthday. So we were out celebrating Jerry's 60th birthday. And then Bruce Pritchard, my good friend Bruce, who I just talked to this morning from WWE, he decided he would stir the pot a little bit, as we used to say in professional wrestling, and kind of get Jerry a little bit agitated and aggravated by telling Jerry that I told Bruce earlier in the day that I thought I could take Jerry down. Of course, Jerry heard that after having a couple pops, and we decided to clear the tables at the Marriott. I think we were in New Jersey somewhere. It was a nice Marriott, but we cleared out all the tables. There were no customers there because they ran all them out. And I proceeded to wrestle Jerry. I don't know if you should call it wrestling, but anyway, I went home with a broken thumb and a mat burn on the side of my face that looked like a porterhouse steak, and he could still go. But I invited Jerry to come and watch because I knew Jerry is just so passionate about amateur wrestling. He's still very, very much involved, produces kids tournaments in Florida, and still very, very active in the community. And I was anxious to see what Jerry had to say because I knew Jerry would be honest with me. We've been very good friends for a long time. And Jerry was blown away. He was really, really blown away, which just, made me feel great.
Love to hear that. Eric, this has been an honor. By the way, if you're watching, do not miss RAF 06, February 28th, Tempe, Arizona. Henry Cejudo versus Uriah Faber is on that card. Bryce Meredith versus Muhammad Makhayev is on that card. Clay Guida, UFC legend. So many fights for this man. He's going to be competing against a mystery opponent as of right now. So that announcement will be coming soon. Hopefully we'll see some more names.
Mystery opponent? That sounds like something I would have done in WWE. What the hell do you mean mystery opponent?
It's TBD.
Next thing you know, we're going to have guys showing up wearing masks.
Put them in a box. The box is always over, Eric, as the great Jim Cornette likes to say. But again, Eric, thank you. Incredible to have you here. All the best to you heading into RAF 06 and continued success.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and support. I appreciate you very much and look forward to seeing you again.